En début de notre célébration, nous prenons un moment pour remercier le Créateur créatrice pour la terre, pour l'eau et pour l'air. Nous nous rassemblons en gratitude pour la terre qui nous soutient, nommée depuis des âges l'île aux tortes. Nous honorons le peuple de Jojage, que nous connaissons sur le nom de Montréal.
May we learn to fulfill the covenant of the wampum belt. We seek right relations with all God's children, and in particular the Haudenosaunee and the Kanien'kehá:ka peoples. We acknowledge the violent harm of the past and commit ourselves to the call of reconciliation. May we learn from each other the ways of the loving Creator. May we live with others with respect in all creation.
Bienvenue! Welcome! Thank you. We're a little behind because we almost forgot our Zoom friends, and there's quite a few of you out there, so thank you. Welcome. So this is our first time at Affirm United, so
it is.
Yeah, we're really excited.
We're very excited to be here. Yeah. Should we tell them who we are? Yeah. Okay.
Should you go first?
Sure. So my name is Bailey. I'm the student minister at BUC and the person who's probably been emailing with you a whole lot because I've been in charge of registration. So if you have logistical questions this weekend, I am probably your person, and I will do my very best to answer them.
And I am Linda. I am the minister here at Beaconsfield United. I know less of the details, but if you need some pastoral support, I am here for you. We just want to make sure everyone knows that here we are building a safe space, a space where all are welcome, where all are called by their name and their pronouns. And so let us respect each other and show kindness throughout this weekend. We also, because we believe in inclusivity, there will be a lot of French language, sometimes spoken, sometimes on the screen. And we're trying as best as possible to make this accessible to everyone who might be bilingual or unilingual francophone. So welcome.
Yes.
Do we have any other
I don't think we have any other announcements so far. Housekeeping things, two things I can think of. If you have not yet found the bathrooms, the way to get to them is just you go out the sanctuary, down to take a right, and then there are two bathrooms. They're both gender neutral. So those are there. If anybody has need of a single stalled bathroom, there's one in my office, so you can just come talk to me and I can show you where it is if anyone needs that. And second of all of the water from all of the taps is drinkable. So if you need to fill up a water bottle or anything, any tap anywhere in the building, good to go.
So welcome to this space. Welcome to this time. Whether you've been here before or this is your first time, whether you're on site or online, welcome. In this time together, may we experience belonging, knowing that we are loved for who we are and for all that we are. Let us celebrate the love of God. Let us take a deep breath. We have come to worship God.
Thank you for that. One thing that is common to us from where I come from, my origin is that when people do good things, we applaud. We say thank you. We show much respect. So there's a tradition in this church. I don't know, maybe I met it or I joined them doing it. But that tradition, we want to introduce you to our good friends that come together today. And that tradition is to share the peace of Christ with everyone. So I want to humbly ask to stand up. Please. And you're going to put your right hand on your chest and your left hand like this. And you're going to share the peace of Christ with everyone by saying, peace be upon you, peace of Christ, 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 yeah, peace of Christ, 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 peace of Christ. Thank you. So we're going to pray now. You can sit down comfortably. Let us pray. Come, Holy Spirit, breathe into our hearts the holy fire of change, sparks of resiliency, improvisation, innovation, and ingenuity. See our talents flare with holy energy. Give us wings of piping hot courage. Ignite our tongues with compassionate words, in burning confrontation and refusal of all evil. Fill our souls with flames of inclusive love as we reach out to others, enveloping us all in glowing coals of acceptance. They grant us lasting embers of strength and faith to embrace the new world of your creation. Amen.
Bonsoir à tous. Good evening, everyone. We're going to hear some holy words from the Gospel of Matthew, and I'll be sharing them in French, and the English will be on the screen. C'est des passages tirés de l'Évangile selon Matthieu 14, 22 à 33, pardon. Tout de suite après, Jésus oblige ses disciples à monter dans le bac. Il veut qu'ils passent avant lui de l'autre côté du lac. Et pendant ce temps, il veut faire partir les foules. Jésus les renvoie donc, puis monte dans la montagne pour prier. Quand la nuit arrive, Jésus est là, seul. La barque est déjà assez loin de la terre et le vent souffle contre la barque. Et les vagues viennent la frapper. Vers la fin de la nuit, Jésus vient vers les disciples en marchant sur l'eau. Oui, il marchait sur l'eau. Quand les disciples le voient marcher sur l'eau, ils sont effrayés. Ils disent, c'est un fantôme. Ils se mettent à crier parce qu'ils ont peur. Mais Jésus leur parle tout de suite en disant, rassurez-vous, c'est moi. N'ayez pas peur. Alors Pierre lui dit, Seigneur, si c'est bien toi, donne-moi l'ordre de venir vers toi sur l'eau. Puis Jésus lui dit, viens. Pierre sort de la barque, il se met à marcher sur l'eau pour aller vers Jésus. Mais en voyant qu'il y a du vent, il a peur. Il commence à s'enfoncer dans l'eau, puis alors qu'il commence à crier, Seigneur, sauve!
Aussitôt, Jésus tend la main à Pierre, puis lui le saisit, puis lui dit, tu n'as pas beaucoup de foi, hein? Tu n'as pas eu beaucoup de confiance. Pourquoi? Ils montent tous les deux dans la barque et le vent s'arrête de souffler. Alors les disciples qui sont là dans la barque se mettent à genoux devant Jésus en lui disant, vraiment, si tu es fils de Dieu. May God add. Yep, that was English. That was the French. May God add understanding to these holy words.
Hello. I'm Emma, and I'll be reading in English from the Gospel of Matthew, the same passage, but it's always good to hear it again. Immediately, he made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
Panelists want to come join me. I would love that. Good evening, everybody. My name is Alix, and I am the newly hired, freshly started executive director for Affirming United. I'm so thrilled to be here with you all in community and with folks online and watching later. We have a special conversation happening over this weekend and starting us off tonight strong. We want to come together to stand up against hate, and not just stand up against hate, but do so in radical love. And so with that, I'd like to introduce to you our panelists for this evening. I get my notes out so I don't forget anything. I'll start here. We have Julian. Julian is a student at Emmanuel College, a ministerial candidate, as well as being the co-chair of Affirm United. One of, that's what it's called.
Do you want to pass the microphone down and we'll just do some introductions before getting into it? Next up, we have David. David is the Executive Director at the West Island LGBTQ+ Center. And he told me to introduce him tonight simply as gay. Next up, we have Craig Sauvé, who is a Montreal City Councillor who grew up in this area.
Everybody.
And next we have Lerato, who is the LGBTQIA+ migrant and refugee support program person at the West Island LGBTQ Center. Lerato, you can hold on to the microphone. I'm going to start with you. Yeah.
So the people on Zoom can. Yeah. Okay.
So tonight, I want us to have a conversation amongst the five of us, but also including everyone here. So at the end, we'll have a little bit of space for questions and comments as they come up. So keep those in your mind as we move through the evening. I'm wondering, Lerato, if you can tell us, what do you feel like in your work at the center is sort of the key issue facing the folks that you are working with?
I think one of the most important, I think the one key issue is integration. It's been a challenge for me. It's just difficult to integrate to Quebec. I've been there for a little over a year, and still I don't know what is happening around me. I do appreciate and I understand that the migration system expect that, but it's just impossible to get around. It's impossible. Like, just to renew your license takes minimum 6 months. And I've been driving for what, 10?
I think that's a good start, if nothing else.
Yeah. So as support increases and as advances are made, we're seeing an amplifying. We should say like even more so at a quicker rate of the hatred to combat that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Same question. What's going on in your world? Where do you identify challenges for the queer community in the spaces that you're in?
Hello, everybody. I am coming here from Toronto, and Toronto is a big, crazy place. I do a lot of work. I run a queer drop-in youth program as well as a queer seniors program. So we have lunch every week, and the youth come for dinner. It's a full day of fabulousness. But a lot of comments that we get in our lunches and in our dinner are about fear. And while we have safe space or brave spaces to come to, safe spaces that we can be ourselves, it's really hard to leave that space and kind of go home or go to school or go to work where maybe things aren't so positive. Some of the seniors talk about, the potential of going into a care facility and having to go back into the closet because care facilities are notoriously homophobic or transphobic, or they don't have the resources for trans healthcare. They don't understand testosterone injections or estrogen pills or any of those things. And so spaces like this are really important, and advocacy is important, and allyship is important. We've sort of been talking about, are you an ally or are you an accomplice in our vision of being alive, our vision of being ourselves and having an average lifespan. Not really deep, but it's the honest to God truth, and like my fellow panelists have been saying, there is this rise in atrocious attitude and behavior, and we so often like to look south and say, well, we're not like that. And I can tell you at Affirm, we get reports from United Churches every week that their flags have been ripped down, their crosswalks have been splattered with black paint, They get hate threats and everything across the country. And it's devastating. And these churches keep putting up their flags and they keep repainting their crosswalks. And it's important. And Linda Hutchinson and the other coordinators can testify the testimonies that we get from people in these churches that it makes a difference. And the little things that seem really little, I promise you, are not.
Yeah, and I mean, we could do better, right? Like the bar for not being the very worst place we possibly could be. Like, let's aim higher than that. And I really love that idea of moving from allyship to accomplishment, being an accomplice. And you know, I've heard it said, I can't remember who said it, but if you're not standing close enough to get hit by the stones that are being hurled at the queer community, you're not standing close enough. You're not doing enough. So what risky and bold behavior can churches take? Can individuals take? Can our cis and straight allies take? Thinking about what's working and trying to focus on the hopeful pieces, the hopeful nuggets in there. Julian, what have you seen to be really helpful and working to support the communities that you're involved with?
I think first and foremost, listening is really important, and knowing when to sit down and shut up. When I'm in a room full of queer seniors, I know nothing about their lived experience. And my number one goal is to sit and listen and hear what I can do. I know nothing about care facilities. I know nothing about hospice care from the perspective of someone being cared for, right? There's a lot of things that I don't know, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that I'm not standing with and fighting for the people whose experiences I don't live. But listening and understanding as much as I can, and doing what I can to meet the needs of the people voicing them. Because not knowing everything is just a human experience. So, yeah.
So listening, shutting up and knowing when it's your turn to speak and when it's your turn to pass the microphone. David, what's working?
I think to actually kind of build off of what you said, a lot of times when I go to give workshops, when I give presentations, one of the things that comes up is people saying, well, how do I respond to this when I don't have the answer, or I don't know? And it's like, I think that actually strikes at a really important point, the power of acknowledging when we don't know and when we don't have the answers. This often comes up in the context when we're talking about allyship and how to be an effective ally to the queer community. People will wonder because they don't have all the info, and they'll be like, how can I be an effective ally if I don't know X, or I don't understand Y, or I've never encountered Z, or I don't know how to define any of these terms? And I think the important thing is to say, well, then like sit down and, or better than sit down, take your voice and amplify someone else's voice.
Right.
Because to try and be an ally, but to approach allyship from an uninformed opinion can do a lot more harm than good. And so I think that that's one of those things that a lot of people, when it gets reframed that way, and it becomes not a, well, that's on you because you have to go out and learn it. And it's just like, oh, well, then take that opportunity to uplift someone else. People feel empowered. And I find that oftentimes flipping the outreach work that we do, flipping those conversations on their head, and in essence, making people feel good about themselves, gives them a little bit more ability to actually kind of step up and do the proper allyship work.
Right.
I've encountered quite a few people over the years who listened to me give a presentation, or who listened to, or who encountered us in a school outreach setting, and were like, oh, I didn't have this information before, and you just provided a space where I could come and ask questions and talk to you, and just even being able to put those thoughts into words helped me frame this conversation differently. And so I'm not saying that we all have to always be on and always be listening and always need to be validating people, especially if they're saying really garbage things. But for those of us who have the capacity to be able to like pardon my French, but deal with the bullshit. Actually taking that space and saying, well, okay, I have the mental capacity, I have the energy to deal with this. I can talk about this thing. Me doing it in outreach, I go into the setting knowing that I'm gonna have to deal with it. Me doing that at home, no, it's not the same thing. And so I think also just us being aware of our own capabilities is so important. And yeah.
Yeah, and so not letting our fears or lack of specific knowledge on an issue to hold us from any action at all, right? And I heard that today from our affirming ministries coordinators is that sometimes we get that feedback from communities of faith wanting to enter that affirming ministries program, that they don't even know how to start doing the education because they are not the experts, but you have to start somewhere. And if you're learning together, you don't have to be the one providing, you know, all the education and knowing all the things. If you can humble yourself and say, we don't know this, but let's figure it out, you know, with humility and with grace and together, then we can move forward. Thanks, David. Same question, Craig, and I'm wondering if you have any insights as it pertains to sort of a municipal or a political landscape.
Yeah, you know, I guess us politicians were looked at people that were always have to have the answers. When the media, you know, puts a mic under your mouth, you have to know everything. So it's not necessarily, we're not taught in our daily lives to admit maybe that we don't know something. I do. I try my best, and I think you used the word before, and I wrote it down in my little notes here. Was humility is humility is super important, and if I don't come from a community, but I want to be a good ally, I've always thought, okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is like listen and check myself, because I don't want to assume that I know everything. I don't want to assume that I can be that leader without really, you know, walking alongside people, walking behind communities too, using my voice when it's the time to use my voice. And sometimes again, politicians, we get confused with those things. It's hard, but I think that's what allyship is. I think it's constant listening, and I think as a politician, I can be a better civic leader if I'm constantly learning, constantly listening, and then checking in. Checking in is important. It's, in terms of friendships and any sort of relationship, checking in is always something that's important. And so going back to, you know, other, you know, community leaders, civic leaders, hearing from them, and learning from them, and then sort of, you know, revising and seeing how, and checking in about the community and asking people how they are. It's something that I try to do on a frequent basis. That I think that will inform me to be a better person when I have to put my voice into council and when I have to put my vote into record. And so, you know, and then also taking other, you know, proactive actions too when the time comes. There are a lot of, you know, political decisions that still need to be made for the LGBTQ plus community in this province, in this city, you know, just for the basic human rights that so many people enjoy. The LGBTQ community doesn't necessarily always get those same rights in the law. So working with the community and trying to help advance those politically is always going to be important too. But that's a collective.
So what I'm hearing there is the importance of community input, right? That nothing for us without us. As well as sometimes the need to be a little bit brave and vulnerable and stand up in a public sphere, take the risk that comes with the privilege of holding political office or holding any position of power and influence in your community, and using that to move rights forward.
Just to add a good quote that came from Libby Davies, who is one of my most favorite politicians of all time. She's from Vancouver. She once told me that a good thing is sometimes go back and talk to the community, even if they're super mad at you, and like take, you know, get that hard conversations and have them all the time. Yeah. It's going to inform you and make you stronger.
Yeah, and I think we can certainly translate that to a church experience. It's like, even if things have gotten tenuous, like keep the conversation open and figure out what's making the community frustrated. Yeah. Lerato?
So I'm not a politician. I'm not. Far from it. But I draw a lot of experience from my life, from the people around my lived reality, because I am a refugee and I'm a queer person. I'm a member of the LGBT community and I'm a trans woman. So this is my reality. It's not something that is far-fetched. I'm going to tell you one story. there was a time when my mom came to collect a check from my boss, Mr. David. That's my boss. So my mom was looking to she was parking in the parking lot, and then she was walking, and then she collected the check, very nice. Then she walked out, and then she picked up her phone, she called me, she's like, Elton, that's my government name, right? She goes, Elton, I saw people like you. My mom is 55 years old this coming Sunday. I'm 32 years old. What came to me was, so you're telling me for the past 32 years since birth, my mom had never seen anyone like me. That it broke my heart. Because all I ever wanted, and I wanted my mom to see that I'm here, I'm alive, I exist, I'm just as capable, I thrive. And I know as a refugee, you know, that's what I was going to the first book. It's overwhelming because 32 years have just been invalidated by one phone call. My mom's 55 years, she still was the same because that's the first time that she saw her child. 55 years. It's her birthday. This is coming Sunday. And so I'm grateful that now I've got access to spaces, to resources. I'm grateful, but it's one more hurdle that I have to go. Now I have to go through my mom's process. Mom, I've been here. Yes, it happened. I have to affirm. I have to console. I have to do everything that she has to unlearn everything and start the first 55, and that's painful. So creation of spaces like this works. I'm grateful, and that's one thing that's working for me. I was talking to David earlier, I'm like, the first time I came to the center, I was like, oh my God, I knew I was like, there's a space like this. 32 years. I came to the center last year in August, I think. And yeah. And since then, I've been here. And my mom comes, she picks me up, and for her, seeing people like me coming to the church, realizing that there is a space for people like me in the church. For me, that's more than I can take. I'm grateful. Thank you. And that works for me.
Thank you for sharing that and that experience of yours. And when I put it together with what you mentioned before about how it takes you 4 hours to get here, what a powerful testimony to the value of spaces like this and spaces that other affirming ministries are creating in their buildings. Like, well done. It's making a difference. Even if you don't get to see it every day, it's making a profound difference in the lives of queer communities. Thank you for sharing that. So thinking about what we are doing as affirming ministries or people of faith, I'm wondering if there are some thoughts on how people of faith backgrounds can do better. So what we, whether it be followers of Christ or other faith groups, what do we need to do to better welcome, affirm, and support the queer community? Julian, do you want to start us off? I feel like you have some thoughts.
I'm like smirking in my something that I always tell spiritual and faithful people is the first thing that you need to do is reconcile the fact that there are queer people that are not going to want to talk to you ever. It is what it is. We cannot control how traumatized people are. We cannot control the harm that other people have done. We can control what we do and the spaces we create and the intentions that we have. And just accepting that fact and understanding that you can't get to everybody. You can't. And you get to who you can and you do what you can, and God knows you're doing what you can. And it's definitely not personal most of the time. The other thing is to use some more churchy language, being a faithful witness, right? Whether you are a queer person or not, whether you have queer loved ones or not, right? You're a faithful witness that we all are people and we all are loved and we all have a purpose on this earth other than to be hated by other people. And it's important to be a witness to that and hold on to that in your heart, in every space that you're in and whoever is standing in front of you.
I've got a whole lot of thoughts in my head. I'll try and find the thread by the end of my statement. But one thing that for me, I got into during the pandemic was reading autobiographies. I've done this little like, oh, it's my birthday coming up. Everyone like buy a book and donate it to the center. That was at the end of February in 2020. So like all these donations came in as the pandemic started, and a lot of them were biographies. So I just took them all home and I read them. And I was really inspired by a lot of them because there were biographies from people from all walks of life. I read at least 2 biographies from Indigenous people. I read a biography from a Muslim refugee in Toronto. I read a biography from a Jewish faith leader who is a trans woman in the States. And each and every one of them expressed something similar, was that for years they always knew that they were different, but they didn't have the language to express and to identify how and why they felt different. They just knew that they were. And they knew that it was something that they had to feel shame over and fear over. And one of the things that I found so inspiring in a lot of these stories is that for people, they had to take time away from that community, that culture that they were a part of. Abby Stein, she had to take time away from being involved in her community of faith, and she lost the connection to her community in New York, which was an ultra-Orthodox Judaic community, and she had to take time away from that and kind of learn who she was and relearn her relationship to her faith. The Samra Habib, when she came to Canada, she had to relearn her relationship to her faith as someone who was Muslim, because she came from a culture where it was not okay to even speak about being gay. And here in Canada, she found a community of faith that celebrated her as a queer person, and celebrated other queer Muslim people. To hear these stories, I think one of the things that's really important to recognize is that people will need to. People feel that the world is not built for them to be able to reconcile those two sides of themselves. Their identity as a person who is gender diverse or who is gay or lesbian or any of those sexualities and gender identities with their identity as a person of faith. And it's given time and given space and given the resources to explore those things, people often can find their ways back to their faith in a way that works, and a way where they can celebrate not just their identity as a person of faith, but also their identity as a queer person. And for people who are parts of communities of faith, just making sure that those spaces exist, that is a large part about it. Because if people feel like they can't reconcile those two sides of themselves, and then when they start looking for those resources, they don't find an affirming mosque or an affirming synagogue or an affirming church or an affirming temple or any of those, it just reaffirms that belief and that shame and that fear and that stigma. But to find those spaces that exist and to step into communities that exist, that are entrenched in their community, that makes a world of difference.
The mic is not working.
Oh, no.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, it's flashing. Oh no. Oh, I'm done, so I'm just gonna pass it along anyways. What is the question?
Just considering what faith communities do to better welcome and support queer folks.
I think I answered the question. But what I can talk about in terms of faith. So may his soul rest in peace. His name is Desmond Tutu. He did a lot of work in Southern Africa. He was a gay activist. So I remember when we started having our satellite TV, and I would switch on the TV and I would see him wearing like a pink robe. I was like, okay, we're moving. And this is like, what, 10 years ago? So that's how people like Desmond, they really did a lot for me in terms of just their presence. In terms of just their presence.
Certain people don't hear you.
Okay, in terms of just their presence on the TV.
That's right. Bailey's just give you a good one.
Okay, this is better. So in terms of just their presence on TV, it really, that was my saving grace growing up, because I was like, okay, I know there's something out there. I'm looking for it. I know I'll find it. If Desmond Tutu can go on the TV and talk about being gay, I know there's something out there. So when he died 2 years ago, I was devastated. I was in Zimbabwe. I was, that's it for me. That was the end of me. But yeah, and then I came here and I saw the center. I was like, oh my God. Now, in a separate issue, I think my mom is here. No, my mom is here. Gossiping about disclaimer. Happy birthday.
Craig, did you have anything you wanted to chime in on that one?
Just, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not a person of faith, but I know you're super welcome in here. But
You
honestly,
are
from
welcome here.
outsider point of view sort of thing, I think what you're doing is like the right steps. You are doing the right thing. And when I, as an outsider, walk next to United Church with a pride flag out there, I look at that, and I'm like, that's a good place with good people. And I just get like a warm feeling, you know? And so the work that you're doing is definitely positive, I think. And so keep at it, basically, because I think it's definitely the right track for people today.
Thank you. And I'll just add a personal anecdote. My daughter, who is 5, every time she sees a rainbow, like anywhere in town, so it's been a big month, she goes, hey, that's like the sign from our church. And she associates now rainbows and pride with church. And she associates the pride parade and getting to walk with her friends from church. And that's the power of, intentional, public intentional, explicit efforts, right? Like those, in her mind, that's just normal. So she's not yet receiving that hateful messaging. And I know she will, just like we all have. But if she can come to that with that foundation of this is love and this is okay, and she is welcome in whatever life path she ends up on, that's a beautiful thing. You had some more thoughts.
This triggered a thought thread for me that I ended up catching and not forgetting. Is the language that we use in our spaces. The symbols are one thing, and if religious people love anything, it's some good symbols. But the language that we use is really important as well. And so I really like to push people to think about, are you using the same pronouns for God every single time you reference God, right? Are you telling stories with very specific language that we've never questioned? Another one that we talk about in our communities is saying, you're welcome regardless of XYZ. You're welcome in spite of your gender, your sexual, right? It gives that same feeling, right? Something that we've been talking about in Toronto among a number of us are changing that phrasing to something like, you're welcome because of who you are, right? Because of all of these intersections that make you the whole person that you are, not regardless of them, right? Not in spite of them, but because of them, you are welcome. And so I want to push you all a little bit, right? Think about, yeah, we use the symbols and we wear our pins and we dye our hair colors, but what language are you using to, right? What are we putting out into the world to represent us, to represent the universe?
Thanks, Julian. That's a really good reminder. That's important. And knowing that when you do that in your community of faith, there will be pushback. There will be discomfort with something new and different. And that's okay, because sometimes we need to be uncomfortable for growth. Most of the time. I want to open it up for a minute. We don't have too much time because I want us all to get to bed at a reasonable hour tonight. Okay, I want to get to bed at a reasonable hour tonight. Is there anybody in the audience, or the audience, what do you call them at church? The congregation, the community, who has a question for any of our panelists? You can just holler it out. We'll repeat it. So that was the most beautiful message that you've received as a queer person, as a part of a queer community of faith?
Yeah, I think for me, there are so many, because I'm also kind of responsible for like taking in the testimonials and making something of them when we're applying for funding and when we're reporting at the end of the year. The number of people who have felt a call when there's that they want to submit a testimonial. We never say like everyone sit down and write us a testimonial. It's you're willing to provide us with one. And so the number of people who elect to come forward with a testimonial and say, this changed my life. And those changing my life stories range from, I didn't have a relationship with my trans child, but coming here as a parent and talking to the parent support group. Closer. Okay, is this better? Okay, sorry. I didn't have a relationship with my trans child, coming to this parent support group and learning from other parents and talking with other parents and understanding from other parents' perspectives. That helped me change, and now I have a relationship with my parents. The number of people in content warning here, the number of people who said some version of, I don't know if I would be alive today if it wasn't for the center or for the work of the center. That every year we get at least 1 or 2 testimonials like that. I think just the fact that we exist and we're still involved in the center is a testimonial in a sense. Lerato is one of our newer employees, but up until recently, we had a coordinator who had been with the organization for 10 years out of 12 or 11 years out of 12 years of existence. And that was like, that person started as a youth. And then because that community and that support and that work meant so much to them, they were like, I want to be a volunteer. I want to be a staff and I can enact the change that I've always wanted to see in the organization. And so we're flooded every day with messages for how important our work is. And that's why like the work of the center and organizations like the center is so meaningful, because it's also done by people who've been there. It's done by people who've experienced that and who have seen what they wanted to see in the world and have acted on it. And I think that in and of itself is a living testament.
Thank you, David. I want to hear from everyone that feels called to share on this, so. Just like a beautiful message that you have heard from being part of, included in this kind of space.
Funny enough, so education in my background plays a huge role, right? I come from culture where you have to get an education. You need to sit in the desk, you need to study and do the work. So while I was doing my time in Turkey, I was teaching English as a second language. And I used to teach, I think they were like, what, 6 to 9? And this, I was like, okay, what do you want to do? Oh yeah, I was receiving homework, and one of the girls, the little girls, she's like, oh, teacher, Bajam, I've got homework for Devia too. Then she gave me a placard, and on it was me. Guess what me looked like? Please. Me had little shorts and boots and a jacket. I took a picture, I sent it to my mom. I said, I've got a vivid picture, it had colored it, everything. I was like, oh, well, thank you for seeing me. That was the first message that the first, like a reflection of what I was doing, of me. And it had a huge impact on me. The second time was, so when I arrived in Canada, I was staying at a shelter in downtown Prida. And one of the security guards came to me and said, well, you do know that you need to sign up or help one of the social workers here. His name is Victor. And so I was like, what the hell is happening here? What's going on? Then it's like, you need to help because there are a lot of people that come through these doors like you that need help. You're in a better position to offer. I don't know what he saw, but he saw something in me that like you need to help people. So that became my driving force that while in Canada, I need to give back something. I need to do something about where I'm coming from. I've been fortunate enough to have a loving, supportive family. I've got a wonderful boss. I've got community, I've got resources around me that help me change my narrative, that help me shape my story. So those are the two affirming messages that I got from people around. Guys, please stay. Thank you.
A lot of stories, but for those of you that don't know, I'm a drag artist as well, and my long-term career goal is to do my ministry in the church in my drag persona. So I have drag, church, whole nine. And I post a lot of stuff online, and I post readings on my YouTube and all that sort of stuff, just to sort of get it out there and get it started and get myself sort of practicing. And a few weeks ago, I was taking the streetcar in Toronto, and this person who was very obviously a teenager comes up and he's like, oh, you're King Jules, right? It took me so by surprise because I've had, church ladies recognize me because I came and preached at their church one day, or this was so different. And they said, oh yeah, no, my friends and I, we watch your stuff. And one of them is a recovering Catholic, and they said, and my friend has this minister right now that's just really awful, and watching your stuff is really hopeful for us. And it's like that is wide, like I feel so blessed to have had next to no negative experiences in the church. I am no contact with my family, but my chosen family and my church ladies have taken care of me in ways that I can't describe. And to be able to provide some sort of grasp to people that is possible after trauma, after hurt, after whatever has been thrown at them by religious people that claim it's because of Jesus. That's the best I can do.
Thank you, Julian. Greg, did you have anything? No. Okay. I think we're going to have to wrap it up. And my final sort of quick final thought I'd like to hear from each of you is your glimmer of hope for the future.
So I'm new in Canada, where my family's brand new in Canada. thank you. Canada is a beautiful place. I mean, you have good people that open the door for you and wait for you from 100 miles away. That's wow. There's more that you can do in your constituency. Scan around, see where there's a need. There's more you can do. There's always an extra mile to go. So I don't know your context, but just scan. Take a quick scan and see what's there. Who needs what? If it's a phone call, like, hey, do you want to talk for a few minutes? Are you okay? You know, just that mental check-in, like, are you okay? Like, I come from a very warm country, right? So Canadian winters are harsh. They are harsh. You know, just that phone call, like, hey, are you okay? They're going through it, you know, so just scan, you know, it's that 5-minute call that makes a whole difference. It's different. It's the difference between me being hospitalized or not. It's the difference between me jumping off a cliff or whatever. So, you know, scan, not a big scan, just a small scan. But for me, those small little changes or those small little scans make a world of difference.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is a hard question. Sometimes I get really negative, but I thought about it and, you know, I try to think about from how far we've come so fast on so many different issues. Like the trans pride flag, you know, is one of the most recognizable flags right now. 20 years ago, we've said the same thing. I'm not sure. Just homosexual marriage acceptability, if you surveyed, you know, Americans and Canadians 30 years ago, where was that at? It was in the minority, right? The people that thought it was okay, even ethically, right? So we're coming super far and we're having these conversations really, really fast and we're evolving really fast. And despite all the negative energy and like the hate that's sort of being propulsed out in this sort of post-truthy media, social media world, like we're still advancing. And I think the team love is winning. And I think that's pretty clear to me.
I think for me, my glimmer of hope, I have to share a story for this. So a couple of years ago, I was spending some time with my friend Amber and our mutual friend Tiff. And Tiff was asking me how my coming out experience was. She was in the process of coming out as pansexual. She didn't really know how to come out to her family, especially because she had always been with a man and she's now expecting a child. And her family did not see her as a queer person. And so she was asking me how my experience had been. And she was asking me questions like, had I encountered a lot of homophobia? Had I had trouble with my family? Had I had trouble in school? Did I have trouble in work coming out? And eventually I had to say, honestly, no, I've had an overwhelmingly positive experience. And for me to be the executive director at the West Island LGBTQ2+ Center, sometimes I feel really guilty. How can I do this work and talk about the challenges that we as a community face and have to overcome when I myself have not lived most of those challenges myself? And our conversation continued. And then eventually Amber, Tiff, and I went to leave, and I got stopped by, and this is where you have to be like the mental gymnastics. I got stopped by Amber's mom's friend's bar. So Amber's mom had a friend over who was helping with some housework, and I didn't know Barb before that moment in time. But as we were leaving, she stopped me and she's like, "Hey, David, can I talk to you for a moment?" I was like, "Yes, strange lady that I don't know. What can I do for you? Am I just carrying garbage? I don't know." And she stopped me and she was like, "I heard what you were saying, and I wanted to just talk to you for a moment because when I was coming out, no one had a good news story. And all of my friends experienced rejection from their friends, from their family, from their community. I had friends who lost jobs. I had friends who lost their lives. And so for me to have gone through all of that and to now hear someone say that they have had an overwhelmingly positive experience, that tells me that the stuff that me and my friends and my generation went through, something has changed. And so she's no longer with us, but like that was like one of the most eye-opening moments in my queer life, because all of a sudden it helped me reframe the way that I looked at the world as like, oh no, we have come a very long way. Yes, we have a long way to go, but we've come so far already. And I think with the backlash that we're seeing today and kind of like the pushback that we're encountering today, I don't think it's possible to go as far back as where we started from. Because there are so many people who stand with us, and there are so many people who support us as a community, and there's so much power within our own community and within our allies and our supporters there's no way we can go back on some of those days. And sure, we might have a step back now. We might take a couple steps back now. But I don't think we're going to end up at the starting point all over again. I don't think that's possible, given the world that we live in. And so that brings me a lot.
Thank you.
I am very hopeful because of the possibility of relationship intergenerationally. I've had the honor and the pleasure of working with queer seniors and accompanying folks in the end of their life. And as a young queer person, there's not a lot of elders that I've had in my life, in our community. And I'm sure a number of you watching this, you haven't had any elders, right? Government neglect and acts of hatred had a number of our generations die far too young. And to watch folks in my age range and younger have relationships with queer folks in their 60s, 70s, 80s is so beautiful. And sorry, it's so like, it's so magnificent to have those connections and to like these two programs I facilitate. Every so often we have an intergenerational dinner at 5 o'clock, which to the kids is really early. You know, and the youth say, you know, we learned so much about stuff that happened before we were even born. And the seniors say the youth are teaching them how to use their phones. You know, we're bonding over share. And it's so beautiful to sit in that room and just witness the joy and the pure love that exists for their lesbian grandmas, for their gay grandpas. You know, it's so beautiful. And it really gives me a lot of hope that now we have elders. I know some of you really don't like that word, but we have elders. We have people to look up to who are living their truth, and we know what's possible now.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you to all of you for bravely sharing tonight. Your expertise and your wisdom and your vulnerability has meant so much to me, and I'm sure to everyone else here as well.
I'm sorry, I can't resist the question. A moment of hope for those of us who live in Montreal. You'll appreciate that Craig gave an impassioned speech in City Council a number of weeks ago as an ally in support of LGBTQ, in support of the need for us to step up and step out here. And we're so lucky to have people like you, Craig, and others who are there as allies. I think that too is a sign of great hope that because of powerful voices speaking with us and walking with us.
We are strong, Shanna.
Can you repeat? Can I share something? I don't mind standing up. I want to say something that would totally embarrass my kid, but she's not here.
My soon-to-be fifth grader, this is like me super bragging about my kid, but I was chatting about her future fifth grade teacher, and she told me that they put her in that class in fifth grade for next year because there's a kid in that class who's trans, and her fourth grade teacher was like, when we talked about queer issues during our sex ed class, the teacher was so actively excited about being an ally that they were like, we're going to put her in that class to make sure that she has a friend. And I was like, that's fine. I've reached the pinnacle of parenting. That's the best. So I just felt like no one else in the world would appreciate that as much as this group of people. And I just wanted to share it.
Thank you.
Growing up in fifth grade and having a conversation like that happening one generation ago. So.
Absolutely. There is so much to be hopeful for. There is a lot of hate, but together we're challenging that hate.
We're standing together in radical love, and we are doing the work. Thank you, everyone, for this conversation this evening. And I hope to continue it throughout the course of the weekend. Thank you.
I love this part because I get to share with you our song of faith. And when we talk about accessibility and welcome and brave and courageous and safe and just that feeling of being loved, that's our song of faith. So I think it's, oh, good, it's up.
That was a beautiful introduction. Well, there are words on the screen for you also. Let us share our faith as we recall these words. Yes, evil does not, cannot undermine or overcome the love of God. And calls all of us to confess our fears and failings with honesty and humility. And calls us to repent the part we have played in damaging our world, ourselves, and each other. And calls us to protect the vulnerable, to pray for deliverance from evil, to work with God for the healing of the world, that all might have abundant life. We sing the grace of
La vie en plénitude imprègne toute notre être. Moment d'inspiration soudaine et d'expression de courage. Pétence de beauté, de vérité, de bonté. Bénédiction, s'aimer, récolter. Amitié et famille. Intellect et sexualité. Réconciliation par la justice. Communauté cultivant la droiture. Expression du centre des choses.
Ainsi chantons-nous Dieu et Esprit, we sing of God, the Spirit, faithful and untamable, who is creatively and redemptively active in the world. The Spirit challenge on us to celebrate the holy, not only in the message of here, but also in the scheme program. We sing of the Spirit who speaks our prayers of deepest longing and enfolds our concerns and confessions, transforming us and the world. Amen. Amen.
That's not a quarter. That's it.
And Jesus, yes. Just wondering, what were you wondering? Well, I was wondering what you do if someone came along, you know, who wanted to join all of us, right? But who loved men.
You know, I love men, right? There's 12 of you, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I know that, Jesus, but oh, you know, who loved men, you know? Who loved men?
Okay. Was here.
Yeah, that. So what I want to know is, what would you do?
And what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, would you, I don't know, stand up and cast the demon out and get them all to repent or something?
Well, because they love. That doesn't seem very right.
Okay, would you pray for them?
I mean, maybe not as much as I pray for you.
That's not fair. Actually, that's fair. But I mean, up till now, I mean, there hasn't been anyone, right? You know?
Are you sure about that?
What? They're hacks?
Has there? Is there something you want to tell me?
Who loves men? Let me think about this. Was it the other Simon, maybe? Oh, maybe, no, I don't know. I know it was Barnabas. It's gotta be Barnabas.
Good old Barney.
Good old Barney.
Don't you have more important things to think about?
Well, this kind of felt important, but yeah, I think I probably do, don't I?
Okay, je pense.
I'll think about more important things, I promise.
Yeah. But you love one another, right?
Yeah, of course. I know. Yeah.